That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
No tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering.
Fairly alarmed here.
Welcome to Masters of the Nerdiverse Reviews. This is MOTN Reviews, where we take a look at cinema's shiniest supernovas and some that are not so brightly lit. I'm, of course, your host, Mike G. And welcoming back to the show is the King of Myths himself, Brant. How's it going?
Going well. Happy to be here again. Been enjoying doing these with you.
Yeah, man. Let the good times roll. You know, make the midnight special. You know what I mean? Shine a light on me. Shine a light on me. So this will actually be our first animated film on the channel, I want to say. So I'm very excited.
And also our first recent film.
Right. Yeah, our first recent film. Because when did this come out? This came out a couple of years ago?
It came out, I think, last year.
Yeah, I want to say like last year. Let me just double check something really quick. But yeah, and this is a film that I didn't think needed a sequel. I thought it was perfect the way it was in its own little vacuum. Yeah, this film actually came out June 5th, 2018. So this is fairly recent, actually.
Mm-hmm. And I agree. I agree. I didn't think it needed a full sequel. It could have done like maybe a mini movie or something to wrap up that cliffhanger at the end and just give like some little nice tie to that if they wanted to release something else with a name to it. But I didn't think it needed anything else.
Same here. It really didn't need. It needed a bookend because they left it open. But you know what I mean? Like you said, like it could have just been an animated short. But without further ado, we're actually talking about The Incredibles 2. The Incredibles 2, directed by Brad Bird, who is a very underrated director, in my opinion. I think the guy just has an eye for action and an eye for just a family dynamic, which I hope he lends his talents to other Disney/Marvel properties, but I'll shut my lips on that. I don't want to jinx the earth, send out thought processes into the ether that may not come awry, for I have spoiled them. What's your history with this series, The Incredibles in itself? What'd you say?
I saw the original in theaters when it came out, so that was like 2004.
Right.
And I loved it. Like, It was so different than anything else at the time period, and it really was a cool and very unique view on superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
Because during that, you only had Marvel and DC. That was kind of where you got your superhero taste from, unless you were like the weirdo like I was and you actually watched anime. So you had another kind of viewpoint. But The Incredibles took it from a very different perspective that hasn't really been looked at until very recently, with like My Hero Academia, that superheroes are people too who have lives outside of being superheroes.
Right. It puts a focus on the occupation of being a hero and, the politics around being technically a vigilante, you know what I mean? And in their world, how it was shunned upon, you know what I mean? Because of obvious reasons.
Well, at the beginning, they weren't really vigilantes. Like, in the very beginning, in the first movie, they worked with the government and they worked with local law enforcement, what it looked like, and that's why they got amnesty and protection from the government when they went underground.
Right. They were like in witness protection or something like that for superheroes. As long as they didn't do any heroing. Like, you're right. They kind of had like a weird kind of like Avengers kind of connection where it's like, superheroing was good for a time, but then the government kind of banned it. And that's why they were work-at-home heroes, which is one of the great, I would say, approaches to the genre, and why Incredibles is one of my top 5 superhero movies of all time. Like, I love that film. It it's a fresh view. It's a fresh lens on the superhero genre, and it was nothing else like it, like you said at the time.
And I just watched it recently, like again, like the first
Mhm.
one. Whew, that animation did not age well.
It seldom does, my friend. It's seldom, especially CG. CG does not set up well. Like I can watch How a Grinch Stole Christmas, and it's still beautiful and touching and well preserved, but I can't very well watch a Jimmy Neutron episode and be like, "This is a work of art."
Oh, it's gross. It's so gross.
Yeah, CG and computer effects have a shelf life, have a very short milk-like shelf life. But the thing about that
And
is,
cell shading and hand drawn typically don't like. I love Studio Ghibli movies, and I've watched almost all of them. And I've watched like Totoro. Well, it's a very, very old movie, but it's beautiful, and still to this day, it's gorgeous.
No one can tell me anything and tell me that Akira is not a beautiful movie that stands up to this day. It just, the animation quality is second to none. But that's hand drawn, though. Hand drawn is its own beast. And unfortunately, there's a rocky start to computer animation. It's only going to get better, which kind of feeds into this film, which I wanted to really talk about I would say the motivations of this movie in regards to the motivations of the original, which I personally felt were a little lacking in the motivations of characters.
Yeah, also felt like the original had very little to do with this one, especially in character development, because we saw Mr. Incredible's character development in the first one, and how he came to accept his family, know that he needed to, embrace that he's no longer this independent person, that he needs to let go of a lot of the glory days and focus on working with his family and to be better. It seemed like he made a regression in this movie to that, like with him being jealous of his wife.
And that's kind of where I kind of take umbrage with the story of this film. The film itself is great. Like I really had fun with it. It was a fun animated film, but certain characters' progression and regression, for that matter, was a little on the nose. Like it's almost like they did, like it tells two different stories. That in this film, it's the story of the husband and wife, pretty much, and their new normal, which is them being broke and kind of having to adjust the roles of the family. Where in the first film, Mr. Incredible was working at a dead end, like tax, he's a tax adjuster or something like that. It was eating away at his soul.
Yeah, he was an insurance agent.
Thank you, an insurance agent. It was eating away at his soul. And he always, in that thrill for superheroing, was reinvigorated by the upcoming of what was the name of the villain in the first one?
Syndrome, but that wasn't even until like the third quarter of the movie when he was introduced. The thrill he got was just doing vigilante stuff with his buddy.
Yeah.
They were doing going into that burning building, getting them out. They were probably taking care of muggings in the back street, doing these things.
Right.
And then that helped him get by, just that little taste, but it wasn't getting that itch he needed scratched. Then came Mirage. She gave him an out. And then, he went beat up the robot, started doing stuff with them, and then after that is when Syndrome was introduced with the new improved robot.
That pretty much kicked his butt, you know what I mean? And so really the focus on this film shifts from Mr. Incredible to Elastigirl. Really, it's her movie. And her, in this...
Yeah, it does the Pixar thing where they focus on a side character.
Yeah, they focus on her, and it's really her story arc. And I did want to kind of go from this movie blow by blow and give our general ideas of characters. And I kind of like the idea that the Underminer, as you mentioned earlier, is this film starts off seconds after the first film ends, which I think is a very bold move. So many years separated, because this film, like you said, the original came out how many years ago? Almost 10 years ago? Like something like that.
15 years ago. Well, It came out in 2004.
Yes. And this was released in 2018.
So 14 years in 2018. So 14 years.
And normally you would think with that much time removed, they would have maybe did like a time jump, maybe make the kids a little bit older. But no, they wanted to keep that, what's the word? That family dynamic of, of the children and having to balance out that life. But the Underminer does appear and then disappears. He kind of fulfills that link from the first to the second film, and then it's no longer brought up again. It's just,
yeah. So for us to do this, do you want to talk about characters first, or do you want us to go straight through story of the movie, then focus on individual characters?
That's a very good question. For this one, the plot kind of feeds into the characters. So let's talk about, I think for this one, I don't think this needs a blow by blow. Because we'll kind of explain the story through the characters. So let's go for characters. I think that'll be a little bit more fun for this film that kind of has 2 or 3 different storylines that are directly character driven, which is Mr. Incredible's arc adjusting to being a stay-at-home father, which he's not handling well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Elastigirl's arc, which is being the money maker versus being the homemaker.
Right. The arc of the new character, Winston Dever, actually, who's this wealthy businessman who has a very interesting backstory, which kind of feeds it, where he creates the motion.
And then you have everything kind of in between. So where would you like to start? Do you want to start with the new dude? Because he's kind of where everything comes together at. He's the reason the movie
Let's talk about
there.
He's the plot driver. Exactly. He's the engine for the film. So Winston Dever he appears very early in the film. He kind of sees,
Yes, he appears right after the family gets settled at the hotel. After the Underminer comes up, they chase after him. He brings down a bank, gets into it, and then his thing starts going crazy, bringing cars and stuff down. The Credibles try to stop it. Then they cause it to shoot up and almost break into another thing, but they're able to stop it just in the nick of time.
He even appeared earlier when everything was going on. He was on the street when the Underminer...
Yeah, he was watching
like, this
them
is my
deal
time.
The Underminer.
Yeah, which is a very interesting approach to this character who is, just to say, he's a little superhero. He's a bit of a fanboy. Yeah,
because he grabs Frozone.
Yeah, he finds Frozone, and Frozone's like, man, I kind of just can't be here right now. And he gives Frozone the proposal, which he will then eventually give to Elastigirl. But actually, Frozone gives them the proposal, saying, hey, I just talked to this guy. He's an eccentric billionaire. He's going to try to bring back supers. And he's like, would you guys be interested? And of course... Yeah,
and then they all
Mr.
go meet
Incredible's
him.
More than excited to do it, where Elastigirl's a bit hesitant. You know what I mean? Like, because she was really the one championing them trying to live normal lives in the first film, which is part of her character motivation here, where Winston Endeavor, he's like Batman if he never decided to train. You know what I mean? Or
no, he is the comic book geek that got inheritance money, because like when they show up, he starts singing their theme songs as he's gushing about them.
He has a very Batman origin where his parents were gunned down by thieves, and him and his sister.
Yeah, it happened the day after supers were put underground, and his dad called, no one answered. Also, it made a really interesting pull to the first movie. Did you catch that? When it was showing his father. Because his father had a direct line to Gazer Beam, and I think it was Thunderhead was the other one. I can't remember what the other line was directly to. But they're the ones that were killed in the first movie. If you're remembering that, and you watch the scene with Mr. Incredible going through the files,
that's why they didn't answer.
Those heroes were killed.
That's why they didn't answer
by Syndrome,
which is kind of nutty. Well, maybe not, because Syndrome wouldn't have been old enough at that time. Well, maybe he would have. No, he would have. No, he would have just been a kid at that point, right?
Yeah, at the time, after like the day after was put, yeah, he wouldn't have been old enough.
Yeah.
But it was very interesting because like, oh, the reason why these people never came and like apologized to these kids or like tried to help this family because they were very close and very tied to this family.
Yeah,
They were dead.
they were just they got order 66. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is kind of nutty. So Winston Endeavor, his plan is to, which is very actually one of the smartest plans I've heard from a kind of the money, because there are certain superhero groups who have just the money, and his plan was it's all a PR spin. You guys are seen negatively because that's how the government shows you. Well, my plan is to show you in a positive light, which will then garner what's the word I'm looking for? Support.
The recognition of the common folk.
Exactly, the support of the common man. And with that power, plus a couple of my friends, we're going to try to get back supers to being government mandated. And he said, okay, that makes, everyone's, and then he, of course, like you said, he was singing their theme songs and getting them all hype and selling them. You know what I mean? He was pretty much selling them on the idea. He even had little infographs with their information already set up. You know what I mean? Like he was really working it. And then he had his sister, Evelyn, who was kind of the brains behind the whole situation. She was the one creating the tech. She was the one kind of working behind the scenes, and she supported her brother. But you can tell that she was always like at an arm's length from him for some reason. She wasn't. She wasn't. Let's say the sunshine in the room, as it were, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, no.
And Winston and
and I loved that. I love the big thing he did where, Mr. Incredible was expecting to be the one to called out because he was, number one. He was the hero that was most recognized. He was Mr. Incredible.
Right. And that's the part of it.
But no, they did a did a spin and chose Elastigirl.
Which makes perfect sense. Right.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense from his point of view because, Mr. Incredible's, got that charisma and everything, but he does not do things delicately.
Exactly. And they're like, this is a kind of a beta of what they want to do. And there's no reason for them to get into heavy money this early in the project. We need someone a bit more stealthily. And I'm sorry, Mr. Incredible, you're a lot of things, but you're not stealth. He's a bull in a china shop. You know what I mean? He's like, oh man, so they ask Elastigirl to do it because
Elastigirl.
Because she's the stealthy of the family, and she's actually a little bit more seasoned than I think Mr. Incredible is. She has some skills. Like one thing I love about Pixar movies, and we can roll right into Elastigirl from this point. One thing I love about the Pixar films is that they play with power sets unlike any other company trying to do it. You know what I mean? They play with this almost reminds me of kind of like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where these characters have powers, but their powers are used in such a weird way that you wouldn't really think about. You know what I mean? Like they adjust the power set, like Elastigirl, who's Mr. I was gonna say Mr. Fantastic, fingers crossed, Mr. Incredible's wife, and the one they chose for this initiative. She uses her elastic abilities in such a way where it's so fluid that she's almost stealthy, like a ninja. It's kind of cool, like how they approach her and how she adjusts her skill set depending on what she does, because she can technically do anything in a weird way.
It's very Mr. Fantastic, but in a lot more creative aspects, especially when she gets that bike.
Oh my goodness.
Like it can stretch apart and she can manipulate the bike with her abilities, and just really cool. That chase scene with the train is one of my favorite parts of that movie. Like her going across the rooftops, getting down, like doing that like spy movies, tilt the bike so it goes underneath the lip of the thing and you're sliding underneath the tunnel along the train.
There's a scene where they go into the tunnel and her bike splits across the entire tunnel, and one side is riding and the other side is riding. I was like, oh, that's smart. That's so smart. And then she's like rubber banding herself for propulsion. She like stretch herself a little bit and let the bike detach, and then fling herself like a rubber band across like great distances. This is just smart. I love how they approach superpowers in this film. And Elastigirl has a kind of a cool arc, because this is her movie, honestly, and kind of her not feeling kind of a way about it, but then even she starts to get that itch of superheroing, and she starts to like it. You know what I mean? She starts to like being the center of attention while they're pushing this initiative, and she's hodgepodging with other heroes that he's just found across the world. You know, which I think was kind of a cool scene of the introductions of the new school heroes.
Yeah, I also like how they show different mindsets of heroes, also that people have different ways of handling the powers. Like, you have the very straightforward with Mr. Incredible, where he does put some thought in it, like especially like going back to the first movie, him using the tree to stop the car chase.
Absolutely. And then you have characters like Vort. What was the name of the Void?
The Void. You had Void, who could make those portals, and like they seem to conserve momentum.
So cool.
To a degree.
Not to jump around too much, but yeah. I did want to actually jump back to.
They're introduced during her arc.
I'm sorry.
But they're introduced during her arc, but we didn't finish the Money's arc.
Yes, absolutely. So Winston Dever was actually kind of, like you said, the actual motivation of this film, because it was his push to bring back supers, which actually motivated our film's villain, which was the Screenslaver.
I called who the villain was as soon as they were introduced.
Absolutely. It was so telegraphed that it couldn't have been anyone else. I would have been surprised if it was someone else, honestly, because it was because the character design alone was like, oh, she's a villain. Something's up with her. There's something going on, and I don't think for a kids' film they're going to make it too deep. You know, like that's a bad guy, which is. Of course, Winston Dever's sister, Evelyn Dever. And her name is even Evil Lynn.
And of course, the origin story was the same thing. But it's kind of like that duality you have. One chose light, other chose dark.
Exactly. Like her, Winston broke a certain way because he felt that the death of his father kind of cemented the need for heroes. In that situation, if the heroes were there, and the bill wasn't passed, my parents would have been alive. That was his motivation. That was how he broke from the traumatic situation. But Evelyn's break was, my mother begged him to go into our safe room. We're billionaires. Let's just go into a safe room. Let these guys take whatever they want, and we'll be fine. Where the father also enamored with superheroes was like, no. I have a direct line to Gazer Beam, and he's going to save us. him and Veronica are going to save us, and his blind obedience to that ebb and flow is what got him killed. You know what I mean? And that's where her break is. It's like, heroes make us weak, and I cannot stand by and let my brother bring on an initiative to further weaken normal red-blooded humans, you know what I mean? And that's where you got the Screenslaver, which is a very interesting name, and also has the ability to but flat out brainwash anyone in seconds with her screens, which she kind of makes a fun little commentary saying everyone's in front of a screen. You know, I can get to anyone. It doesn't really matter.
That's so true. It's so true. And I like the name. It's such a good villain name, I feel like.
Yeah. And it's hard not to compare her to Syndrome, because Syndrome had a very similar kind of motivation. Like, I was spurned by...
Yeah, he was scorned by the hero that he was enamored with. Yeah, it's very...
And they're both wealthy. And, and they both ended up being wealthy, kind of Lex Luthor... kind of, I hate Superman because he's super. kind of motivation, which is kind of keep saying kind of, which is a good motivation to have for your human villain, which I almost hoped that this film had a super villain, an actual super villain, someone with powers that they can, as a family, team up against. But they kind of fixed that problem because through the screenslaver's hypnotic, I would say gaze, she pretty much was able to, at some point, enslave every major adult hero of the film. If you know what I mean. Even the Incredibles themselves.
Yeah. Everyone in the cast was underneath her control.
Besides the
kids.
That's a good segue to the children. And Dash didn't really have an arc, unfortunately. I think Dash is very interesting. His sister, though, Violet, had quite the arc in this film. She was the I'm a teenager, which is kind of funny because they nebulized her, quote unquote, her betrothed at the beginning, her crush, because he saw her without her mask during the beginning of the film where the Underminer was doing his attack. So the G-Man had to kind of wipe his brain of the event and accidentally wiped her from his brain as well. You know what I mean? Which sent her on a emotional spiral throughout the entire film until the very end, where she kind of got it together for the family. The one family member I really want to talk about is Jack Jack.
I love Jack Jack. He was so good in this movie. That raccoon fight
That's
is
actually my favorite part of
this
the film.
Movie.
That raccoon fight, it's so simple, yet so complex. Like how the entire action scene is on a tightrope, and it's just nothing but. This is why I want Brad Bird to do Marvel stuff, because he has such an eye for. It's almost like a ballet. You know what I mean? That fight scene is a ballet of movement and give and take and drama and even a little bit of suspense, and how it kind of ties into itself. Because Jack Jack's watching an old movie on TV because his dad is just emotionally and mentally wiped out, because Jack Jack's powers are starting to develop, which are many. He's almost like Legion from the X-Men in a weird way. And
they're getting stronger. Like we saw some of the first movie, but they've become a lot more powerful in the time between the two movies. And the first one, he could just do like fire. He was able to shoot laser beams, shapeshift, and float. That's all he could do in the first one, if I remember correctly.
This one, geez Louise, he can increase his mass. He can go to different
multiply.
He can multiply. He had multiplicity. He had telekinesis.
The fire. He had the shapeshift.
He had, because he changed himself into Etna at some point. He had about. They said he.
Well, he also did the demon form thing, like in the first one.
He went into a beast mode. He had his laser beam eyes.
The fire. The fire was there. The laser eyes were there.
They said he had about 17 known powers by the end of everything. And I think...
Yeah, he was able to go through the walls. He could fly. I don't know if it's 17. I wouldn't know what the extras are.
He's just a fascinating little character. So he spent the night with Auntie Etna mode.
Oh, that was my secret favorite scene. Him, like, walking like Edna next to her with a lollipop.
Yes, with the lollipop in his mouth, doing all her mannerisms and stuff. And him doing the classic, verification check at the door. So cool. And one thing that, the main thing that stuck with me with him is that she called him a polymorph, which, if anyone plays, like, fantasy games, that means pretty much he has, and she mentioned something which was really kind of cool about this. It was very universe building, because she said, babies, sometimes babies will show multiple powers because they have so much potential.
Well, what she said is that he represents the endless potential of children.
So he could be. That's her wording. That's her wording. And she said, but with him, he's special. You know what I mean? Because she said, we don't know what he's going to fall on if it's not everything. You know what I mean? Jack may be like, he reminds me of Franklin Richards from the Fantastic Four, where he's just reality manipulation. He can just do whatever he wants. You know what I mean? But I just think Jack had so many strong moments of this film. Even at the climax of the film, he just shines so much. I just want a Jack edgy future, like where you see Jack from the future and he has like a beard and a missing eye and he's floating. That's all I want. I just want to see hardcore Jack.
I don't think Jack will ever be like edgy. I don't think that's his thing.
Kind of. I'll leave that till the end, but kind of my hopes for this franchise. But yes.
Did you also get the X-Men parallel?
Yeah, there's a very big X-Men parallel, especially when they start introducing other heroes.
Not the whole legislating legal thing, the genetic ties to this, like it's super X-Men.
It's super Civil War, where it's like heroes need to be legislated, and if not, they just need to make it flat out illegal to do any heroing whatsoever because of their genetics, and heroes breed heroes kind of situation that were kind of on the periphery.
And now we're in an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
We're in an opportunity now where Disney owns Marvel, and if they want to, they could tie Incredibles into any one of these. Like we could have a X-Men meet Incredibles kind of thing.
It would be so easy just to say they're mutants and call it a day.
Yeah, it would be so easy. Like we already have this genetic thing to it, so we could just say it's the X gene and tie it into there. Or if they want to have a fun with it, and like all Disney movies are becoming live action, they have Sky High.
If they did, I don't even know how to feel about a live action Incredibles film. You know what I mean? Like, just throw them into MCU. I don't know.
Or they have Sky High. They're Sky High, literally there.
I miss Sky High. Shout outs to Sky High. If you've never seen Sky High, that's an OG superhero movie. That's really good. It's very, very good.
It is very good. It's actually got some pretty decent character development.
Absolutely.
In it.
Especially with the main character kind of coming into his own, which reminds me of another show that I'm going to plug and tell you to watch, which is Umbrella Academy. But we're not going to go into that on this episode. But we get to a place of the story where Elastigirl believes she's won, believes she's kind of discovered the identity of the screenslaver, and everything's kind of back to normal. But nothing's adding up for her because she does have a bit of it. She has a very much of an inquisitive mind. She's sharp. Yeah. Yeah,
and she's like, this dude's way too smart. How did I catch him so easily?
And she's having this conversation right in front of Evelyn, who wears her motivations on her sleeves. And Evelyn happens to just slap on the hypno shades or whatever they were and just automatically takes control of Elastigirl, which leads to one of the most interesting scenes is where Elastigirl is captured in a frozen room. Frozen. Mm-hmm. And it almost looks like stop motion claymation. It tripped me out. Like
it was directly parallel to that scene from Fantastic Four,
absolutely,
where Dr. Doom had Reed and liquid nitrogen.
Yep. Don't stretch. If you stretch, you'll just crack yourself, like the T-1000, like the T-2000. Mm-hmm. And she then, of course, explains her villainous motivations. Heroes make us weak. I can't have that. So I'm gonna hypnotize every single hero I can and have them destroy the superhero summit, which was going on this big pimpin' boat that they had in whatever, I forget the name of their actual city. But then,
did we get a name for their city?
I don't think so. Honestly. It's not like the Tick where it's just the city. You know what I mean? I'm sure it has a name.
I love the movie, but I love the Tick, by the way. It's great.
Don't get me started on the Tick, Brent. I love the Tick so much. I love everything about it.
It's so good.
I love every form of the Tick, from his television shows to the comics. It just don't.
The animation was super good. The cartoon series they did, I loved it.
I have them all on DVD. I love them so much. But so we get to the climax of the film where the kids find their father's Elasticar or Incredimobile and make,
Well, they found it on the TV because it was on a TV show. He's like, "That's my car. They told me it was destroyed. It was not destroyed." It was like
Nope.
the TV was talking to him. It was really funny. I love that trope.
yes, I did, like he was having a conversation with him, and
Yeah,
yeah, and the father just kind of he just say, "It's fine." I give up. It's fine. I can have it. He had the remote control and everything. He could have got the car, which is how Dash got control of it. Where the mind controlled supers, who I believe one was kind of like the owl. One was an owl guy. One was
the owl. The Screech. The Screech was their name.
The Screech, the Void.
Yeah, who was just the owl person?
There was a old man with irritable bowel syndrome. Yeah, he
was the regurgitator. He was the regurgitator.
Yeah, and he had acid reflux. He was like disease or power.
It was lava puke.
Jeez Louise.
It was a lava puke.
And we had the Crusher, which was this this black Russian dude who can just crush anything like without moving. It's almost like telekinesis.
I think it had to be metal. It looked like it had to be metal.
Because he was crushing Violet's ball.
Because he was doing like cans. Remember, like he was cracking cans in the stuff that showed his abilities, and then when on the boat, he was causing the metal pipes to bend.
Oh, okay. Because I thought he was trying to crush Violet's invisible bubble at some point, but I think that was something else because they had the electricity guy too, the electro guy.
Yeah, I don't remember. I would have to rewatch that scene, but his powers were only shown with metal, the bits that we saw. But that could just be him like training. I don't know. One
of my favorite visual gags of this film is where Dash is trying to run away, but the Void puts him in an infinite loop. And for a split second, he's running in the loop, and it's so pretty. It's just the prettiest part of the movie to me. I'm like, this is why I like Brad Bird, because he thinks like that, which is so nutty. So the kids get into the car scene, which is the car scene of the film, where the Incredible-Mobile is pretty much the Gadget Mobile. It can do whatever you tell it to do. Something it does it. You know what I mean? Get us out of here, escape. Follow that boat. It just turns into like a
ejector seats.
Yeah, ejector seats, right? She's like, no ejector seats. He's like, ejector seats. They just spring up. So hilarious. Oh man. But I don't know. The climax of this film, I think, wasn't as good as the first Incredibles film. Like I said, the motivation and the abilities of the villain of this film were kind of left. That was like maybe the most lackluster part about it to me, was that, it was Elastigirl's fight, right? It was her fight to win because that was her story arc and it needed to be completed for her full catharsis of being in the spotlight and bringing back supers properly. But what the rest of the family was doing was also just as interesting. Mr. Incredible going under the boat to kind of turn the boat away from the city.
Yeah, Frozone breaking the rudders on the front.
Yes, Frozone breaking the rudders, absolutely, on the front. And I forget what Dash and Violet were doing. And I know Violet was taking care of Jack.
They were controlling and reeling him up.
Right.
Mr. Incredible. While
at the same time, Void kept catching Elastigirl because he kept slipping off the escape jet, which I love the way they play with powers in these films rather. And they save the day. They actually defeat the villain, who doesn't die because Syndrome Ultra died.
Oh yeah, he died hardcore.
Syndrome died so hard, dude. Like, gee, that was one of the most like cringy, like, Jesus, like in a cartoon for children. Like, he ate it hard. Whereas Evelyn survived. She made it out. I think just because Elastigirl is a pro, you know what I mean? Elastigirl is like such a pro at being a hero, but she's still nonchalant about it.
Well, Syndrome's death was more due to himself, kinda. His cape got caught in his turbines.
No capes. Plane. No capes.
Yeah.
And Evelyn kind of just was saved by Elastigirl. Elastigirl did not have to save her. She could have did a Batman Begins and let her crash to a watery death, but no. She saved them, and heroes were now made legal again. which is something that
I liked the introduction of the foreign heroes. Like, we didn't get names or anything or shown about them, but I liked them showing that there was more.
that's one of the things I love the world building in this film. That what was it? Endeavor. Is that what's his name? No. What was Endeavor is the hero from My Hero Academia. West Endeavor said, "Oh, I found these heroes from around the world. That's going to be part of my initiative. That I've agreed." And you had a little mix of everyone. You had the French electricity dude. You had Void, who I believe was American. You had that giant kind of like juggernaut lady who was from like Colorado.
The Brick.
The Brick, right?
The Brick,
she was cool. I liked her. You had a nice little. It reminded me of the Great Lakes Avengers, which is this version of Avengers where there's nothing but Z grade heroes that aren't really that effective, but they save the day in their own way. I like that little touch.
I'm not only referring to them, but I'm also referring to the people that were brought in near the end of the movie, the ones that were with the foreign dignitaries.
Oh yeah,
those heroes as well. Like, we didn't get introduced to them, but I love their designs, especially the dude that was basically like the Buckingham Guard. Like, he had that hat and stuff with like a thundercloud on his chest. He's like flying there at the end.
Yeah,
I loved his.
Yeah, man, and they did that hero shot at the end where they're standing in the ray of light. You see some of them floating in the background. Very Avengers, very Justice. It had Justice League. DC almost failed to it, and that's one of the things I like about this series is that people always say that Marvel and DC are like church and state. You know what I mean? Where DC is more of the gods among us, these pantheon of superhumans that protect us, and they're to be admired and worshipped in a weird way. Whereas Marvel are the mistakes. They're the heroes brought on by science or by happenstance or by mistakes. And they have to learn to use their mistakes for the betterment of mankind. They're gifts, as it were, through calamity. And The Incredibles always knows how to walk that line. You know what I mean? Between they're working class people who have jobs and have to worry about money and, but they're also have comic books about themselves and merchandise and fan clubs. So it's that weird balance of both the adoration in the real world kind of view that are put on Mr. Incredible and Frozone, and at the time, Gazer Beam and Elastigirl. So I love that little meshing of both the big two houses on their approach of how superheroes are kind of seen by the world. And that's a big thing about this film is how the world views these heroes in a negative light because all they see is the destruction and it has to be death that they cause whenever they feel like having one of their big giant hero fights. Because I'm sure people died at the beginning of this film.
Oh yeah,
the Underminer killed probably like 10 or 20 people at least.
Easily. One thing is really interesting what they didn't play on in this movie as much as they did in the first one is like they didn't really show any kind of extent of these people's like anyone in the movie's abilities or powers. Like, we got a lot of Elastigirl, but like in the first one we got a feeling for like how tough Mr. Incredible was. Like him in the very beginning stopping the train or easily using that tree or being able to stop that giant robot's claws and able to throw the robot.
One of my favorite scenes.
We got an idea for like how strong he was, but we don't really get an idea like what else these people can do. Like if Elastigirl was shot, could she bounce bullets because she's rubber? Is Mr. Incredible bulletproof?
We don't know.
Like, these are things like was very interesting. Like, they didn't really answer, but like you feel like they don't need to. Yeah. It'd be fun for the viewers and stuff to have those kind of answers. Like, how extensive did their powers go?
Yeah, and it was more of a display of power, where in the first film it was the growth of power, where you had Dash, who was just kind of getting in touch with his speed, and then he just runs out into the ocean and doesn't know what's going to happen. And he just finds himself running on water. And he gets that excitement, that exhilaration of what the hell is happening? And he just speeds off. That's one of my favorite scenes in superhero history, is the exhilaration in that kid's face, where he did something he didn't know he could do. And then his discovery is our discovery. And he's just like, let's go. he goes full ham, Flash levels the speed, and I'm just like, yes, they understand. Even in the first film, Violet's growth, because when she first started, all she could do was turn invisible because she was the angsty teen. But by the end of that film, she was making force fields that were able to block those giant robots' attacks, and she was bouncing all over the place and protecting her family with her force fields. Very invincible woman, and her powers grew. And like you said, Mr. Incredible's abilities were on display the entire film for the first film, where I feel like his abilities in this film were kind of nerfed. You know what I mean? He didn't feel as strong as he did in the first one. Maybe because
I know Brick is also supposed to be super strong, but I felt like Mr. Incredible was supposed to be tougher. Like that's what at least I felt like.
Yeah, I feel like he was getting mopped up, because Mr. Incredible is supposed to be I don't know if he's Superman class strength, but he sure is maybe the Thing or something. Like he's supposed to be really, really strong. And when he was getting tossed up by Brick, I was like, nah, he should be able to just one shot Brick. You know what I mean? Like if he wanted to, but I don't know if it could have been because he wasn't really fully rested. You know, I know he slept for 14 days at some point of the film, but I don't know if he was really feeling like himself this entire movie because he was constantly being ripped and torn by his new responsibilities as a stay-at-home father and having to kind of deal with Jack's development, and that just driving him absolutely insane because he didn't kind of know how to handle that or deal with that. But all in all, I really like this film. All in all, I do have my little quips and issues about it, but overall, I don't think it was it necessary. No, but I think it's still a good add-on to the story.
It's a good movie. It's a fun ride.
Absolutely.
I was disappointed in Mr. Incredible's arc. I loved the development as a father, but I was disappointed in that everything that he learned in the first movie seemed to vanish.
Exactly. His arc, it's almost like, okay, we know it is. He's fine. You know what I mean? After the end of the first movie, all his issues melted away. He just was a dad. He has new issues now. And I just but you still need whispers of the first film to kind of dictate his decisions for the second film, if that makes sense. We need to see that growth, because even Violet took a back step, a regression in this film, because she had way more confidence by the end of the first film that kind of regressed because the boy she liked didn't reciprocate her emotions.
Yeah, because at the end, oh, we're superheroes, we're going to fight the Undertaker together, and then just immediately backtracking. Yeah. But again, that can explain, she's a teenager, very emotional, so you can give some give and take to that.
I know, and yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I get that, and it's going to be some give and take to that. I think just the most interesting arc of the film, because it's kind of forced to be the most interesting arc, was Elastigirl's shift in motivation in this movie, where she reluctantly wanted to become the face of this new superhero initiative. She was seduced by the abilities and the money, and not necessarily the money, but more like the admiration that she was receiving, again, doing interviews and stuff like that. But then she saw through the veil of kind of the situation, and then kind of grounded her back down. You know what I mean? Right before she was brainwashed by the screenslaver. And then by the end of the film, the very end of the film, everyone seemed to be happy with how things were. Okay, we get to be superheroes again, I guess. Everything's fine. Which kind of makes me wonder what possible threats can this group endure, let's say, in a trilogy. Because I would be absolutely surprised if this film was not given the trilogy rub, in that Incredibles 3 is somewhere down the road if Brad Bird wants to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love that. That'd be really fun to see. My main issue with this movie is that like I said earlier, it does not take enough from the first. Their reluctancy to join this person, the way they are saying, like, oh, we don't need to be heroes anymore, like, you know, especially Elastigirl, after the end of the first one seems really weird. And, like, how they really kind of decided as a family they're going to do this stuff together.
Yeah.
It seemed they really took a lot of steps back and did not focus on a lot of what the last movie ended
Even
on and those
Violet
last
mentioned it to
lessons
her
that were
mother, like, so
learned.
a moment ago you were cool with us working as a family, but now you're not. And then Elastigirl was like, well, yeah, I'm your mother, and I don't want you guys doing that.
Yeah.
It's like, but a minute ago, you had costumes made for us. You know what I mean? Like, we were out there doing it. We fought the Underminer as a family. We didn't succeed. And maybe it was that defeat that made her change her mind. You know, that the Underminer got away. You know what I mean? Like, he accomplished what he wanted to do. He reached his havoc.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that defeat is what made Elastigirl kind of have second thoughts about having her children in the line of fire, which I always think about. Kind of makes me think about like you were mentioning, the X-Men. It always makes me think about like how Charles Xavier was okay with putting teenagers on the battlefield against Magneto and his grown men. You know what I mean? And Sentinels. It's very kind of disturbing. Like,
Yeah.
you know?
But again, no one got hurt with an Underminer, so I feel like a lot of her stuff was kind of unfounded.
I mean, the family
because no one
wasn't
was hurt.
Those, I mean, with all their power sets, I'm sure that. Yeah,
A lot of people were killed. I'm not saying that no one at all got hurt. There were some
that's what
people
I'm saying,
killed
like,
in
the
that.
family is damn near
Definitely.
untouchable. With the power sets alone, there's not. Maybe
Hmm.
Dash is the most vulnerable of the family because he can't create force fields. He's not made of brick. He's not elastic, and he's just not Jack Jack. Who I don't think Jack bleeds or breathes for that matter. He likes cookies, but I don't think.
We've proven that Jack doesn't take damage. Like the raccoon was biting him, and he
gotta
was
look
not
at
being
these things,
affected
right?
by it.
Like Jack was getting thrown and scratched and bitten, and Mr. Incredible walked out and said, "Oh, there's not a scratch on you. Your diaper isn't even dirty, right? You need to get dirty from fighting in a yard with a raccoon for 15 minutes, fire and brimstone. Like Jack's a problem. Like I would love a sequel and let Jack be some kind of Dark Phoenix like villain, and they have to bring him back down to earth. I would love
kind of like a Superman moment where I'm above everyone, but he doesn't have a weakness kind of thing.
Put Jack in his terrible twos and let him go nuts. And they got to teach this child the responsibilities of power. Like I would love the trilogy to end with them having to kind of train Jack through baptism by fire. Like Jack's in his terrible twos and he's running around the house causing all types of horror across the world because Jack's uncontrollable. Because he could just do whatever he wants.
What I'd like to see for if there was to be a third movie, I'd like them to set up a kind of thing like with X-Men or Sky High, where they're opening a school or a facility to train the new heroes. Because these new heroes were not like the old school heroes with like Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, Frozone, who were coming up in an age where they learned how to fight crime, they learned how to take care of themselves, they learned how to adapt their powers to make sure that they were protected and they didn't get hurt.
I think, and that plays perfectly into the end of this film where heroes are now legal again. You can have public domains or private facilities where they will train these children on how to use their powers effectively and responsively.
Not in the children, but also other adults, because like remember them talking to the new heroes, like they weren't really sure how to use their own abilities. Like, Void and all them, like they never really got field tested, they never really used their abilities like these people did.
And I think that would be cool. Have like a campus where it's like preschoolers, high schoolers, college kids, and then just like adult classes, night classes. The adult heroes who don't know how to use their powers have to go to night school, You know what I mean? That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, but I love this idea because then we can focus on like Dash,
Yeah,
Violet, Jack
that's
Jack
why
if
I'm
need
saying time
be.
jump. Give him a time jump.
Yeah, time jump. Like Violet being college, Dash being senior in high school, Jack Jack
Like
being
Dash's age. Like Dash's age
elementary,
now.
beginning of middle school. Yeah, like
And the
Dash's
parents retire,
age.
and the
Yeah.
parents are like about to retire from being heroes. Because
Well, they're already retired, and they're just
yeah,
teachers at these facilities. Because who else would you have teaching people how to be superheroes besides
you know,
Mister Incredible and
it would be too
Elastigirl?
close to Monsters University, but Incredibles University has a really cool. Incredible University has a really good ring to it. You know what I mean? And have the villain be like one of the kids at the school, or another
Hmm.
teacher, or whatever. You know,
That could be one of the teachers. It can be someone at the school, or they could be someone that was laying in wait and learned that all these people are
and
going to
target
be
it.
here
Yeah, man.
and
So
target it.
if you had to score Incredibles 2 from 0 to 5, what are you scoring this bad boy?
I would
Mm-hmm.
say 4 out of 5. It was a very good movie. It had amazing effects. The music was good. It just did not
Mm-hmm.
tie enough back to the first one for it to be a proper sequel and make me feel like it was an amazing
Yeah,
movie all over again.
I kind of echo your sentiment. Where the first movie to me is a 5 out of 5. It's the perfect pitch of superhero fantasy with family dynamics, with hope and excitement, and it just makes you smile. It just makes you smile from the music. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how it mixes that
Hmm.
Silver Age vibe of no Golden Age vibe of comics, like that old gritty comic book style, that like the beginning, like the reporters and the paper spins and all that, and then how it ties it up with the more
Just
moderny
perfect.
vibe.
5 out of 5.
Yeah, the first one was
And I would give
perfect.
this one kind of. I'm torn between a 3.5 and a 4 out of 5. Only because I feel like this film, for as good it is, it's very well done. Brad Bird is no slouch. He's very good. It just doesn't take any chances. You know what I mean? For me, it doesn't reinvent the wheel like the first film
Mm,
did. It kind of it plays in its own. It plays in the sandbox that it's already created for itself. It doesn't break out of that. It doesn't. It didn't. It didn't excite me to the point. It didn't expand.
expand.
It expanded on everything, but its own creativity. It expanded on the lore. It expanded on character motivations. It expanded
Mm,
on the human side of the equation of how people view heroes. That all was expanded upon. I'm not going to take that away, but the creativity of the film felt lacking, like just working outside of the parameters of modern cinema. Like it was almost too influenced by your Marvel Studios, by your DCEU in a weird way. It didn't feel like it was completely outside the box, like The Incredibles was for so many years, to other superhero adjacent films. So I think I'm going to settle on a 3.5. Like I enjoyed it. It's not a bad film. It left me wanting. It just made me want to watch the original again. You know what I mean? Yeah. Cool, cool,
yeah.
cool. So, you have any passing thoughts on this film before we close this bad boy out?
Again, it was a really good movie. I love that scene with Jack Jack. That pretty much is what
Right.
sealed it at a 4 for me. Just how
Yeah.
fun that was. And just the ideas of a future is also kind of what made me really think, okay, you did good enough and you set a lot of groundwork. Maybe we can get a nice trilogy cap ending to this with Incredibles 3
Absolutely.
bringing
I
it out.
100% agree. That Jack Jack versus the raccoon scene was the film for me. And maybe even a little bit of the Elastigirl train sequence was amazing. I love how that was directed. I really do want a trilogy. I want this story to be closed out so I can have my Incredibles trilogy and it'd be perfect and beautiful and I can just watch it whatever I want. Uh,
One thing I did not like that kind of also brought this movie down a little bit. There was no hero test in this movie. In the first one, we had that moment where Mr. Incredible thought his family was dead, and he was threatening to kill Mirage, like he was going to crush her bones. And at that point, he doesn't because he is a hero. He is a good person, and he can't just kill somebody that, even if they did something bad, he is not that person.
And that was a strong. See, this is what I'm talking about when I mentioned The Incredibles' first film, is that it's heavily layered in real life. Like no, I'm just going to kill you. You killed my family. If I'm to believe what you're telling me, my entire family is dead. So, but in apropos of not knowing his family was alive, like you said, he made the decision not to kill Syndrome because he's a hero. You know what I mean? And he had to come back to terms with what that meant, being above the villain. Whereas this film, I would dare to say that the test of the hero was actually failed, because the seduction of the hero was complete. Whereas Endeavor had good intentions. I'm not going to say he was a villain of the film. He was just more of the match that kind of caught things aflame. But Elastigirl, I don't think she actually learned anything from this arc, if that's fair to say. Yeah.
I don't think she was tested. I don't think there was a test here. Like you say, like she got seduced by Edwin or Walter. I can't remember what his name is, but he was doing something that was actually legitimately good. He was doing something to help people. So I don't know if that is really a seduction as much as their prerogative.
Only reason I use that's such a strong that's strong of a word is because there was a part of the film where she started to enjoy it a little too much. She was doing the interviews and being front facing and, being the face of this new initiative. And she was still missing her family, but she did not once go back and check on them while she was doing her superheroing. She was off and just said, okay, you got this? Okay, good. You just let me know if you got it. She called.
Well,
yeah,
she did call,
and I'm sure she could have heard I'm sure she didn't believe wholeheartedly that Mr. Incredible just had it. You know what I mean? Like had all of it under control. There's no way her mother's intuition was not just going nuts. Like there's got to be something going on, but she didn't question it. She was so into the moment of being the face of heroing that her family was on the brink of a complete meltdown, be through Mr. Incredible. That they didn't reconvene until she was brainwashed and kicking his butt and got him brainwashed. You know what I mean? Like there's something about that kind of rubbed me the wrong way about the character's motivation, was that she was willing to have her fun. And maybe this is the wrong take. Maybe I'm looking at it incorrectly, but.
Well, it played into something in the first one. Like she was the face of like women heroes, and she was kind of like number 2, 3, like underneath Mr. Incredible and Frozone, but she was like up there, one of the big people. And then she got put number 1.
She's like the Wonder Woman to Batman and Superman in a weird way. Like she was like, I am on finally, I'm the one in the front. And she took that and ran with it. Right. And it wasn't even the capturing of the quote unquote screenslaver at that time. That didn't wake her up to what she was doing. You know what I mean? Like what she was blindly neglecting. It was till the absolute end of the film where she was like, "Oh yeah, you're the villain," but it was too late at that point. She was already completely under the spell of the screenslaver. It's my whole thing is that, and even by the end of the film where she saves the day and Evelyn is in jail, she still didn't kind of learn anything. Like you said, she didn't have a test. There wasn't something for her to overcome. She didn't forego that limelight to save her family, or she didn't forego that limelight to be with her family. She stayed in it and it worked out for her. because now they're just heroes and it's legal and everything's fine and there's no repercussions for any of her decisions. Whereas
what I think would have made this
Mr.
movie incredibly
Yeah.
more deep and like it'd be really fun was for the screensaver to be a red herring. Like his sister's doing all this, but the dude who you think is just the dumb money is actually like mastermind level smart, interpreted
that would be
all
cool.
of this, and then uses this just to like separate and like bring down these people. Like, oh yes, he makes Elastigirl like the super famous person, and then like when he knows like she's tired from doing all these interviews, she's mentally worn, her family's on a string, he just pulls it out all underneath them and then casts them on the street.
And that's where I originally thought the film was going to go until I met his sister. It's like, oh, she's the villain. You know, I thought they were going to be like, okay, this guy is going to gas lamp her. Is that the word I'm looking for? Where he's just going to like hype her up to where she's completely immersed in the limelight, and then flip it on her and make her like the scapegoat or the villain for his true motivations. But no, Dever was good to go. A positive influence on the film from the word jump, and he never really he didn't really have an arc. You know, he was just.
I was kind of he did have a little bit that he stood up for himself at the end there,
Yeah,
and like he denied his sister's escape and turned her in.
Yeah, but even he, you know, his motivations never really shifted. He just saw, oh, my sister's evil. I'm not above putting her in jail. To further my ambition to bring supers back to the forefront. You know what I mean? He like he set out what he needed to do and he did it. If anyone is the true hero of the story, it's him. You know, in a weird way, because he did exactly what he wanted to do, and he actually very effectively executed his plan. And now he's the money. He's probably the most famous human on Earth because now he brought back supers to the forefront across the world.
I bet his profit margins have increased significantly.
Ooh, think about that, man. Like if Lex Luthor was good, you know, it's like he's like, yeah, I bankroll the Justice League. Me and Wayne Tech bankroll the Justice League. Can you imagine his stocks just going insane?
Yeah, like I don't know why Luthor doesn't think of it from like an actual businessman point of view. Like, you know, if I actually embraced Superman and all them, and you know, decided to make an insurance policy for those who get their shit destroyed by them,
like it would make so much money. It's the easiest thing in the world, but that guy figured it out. He did it. Like he is the unsung hero of this film because his motivations is what gave and it's almost like his sister and him were in cahoots the entire time because her villainy only propped up his ambition. Because without a villain to kind of let the heroes punch something, it would have taken way longer for his plan to kind of get off the ground. Catching, listening to a police scanner and beating up or capturing, bank robbers is not going to do it. You need a villain. You need a cataclysmic event to really show off what you want to do. And his sister just fit into that perfectly. It's kind of weird. It makes you think, like, was that their plan all along? I need a manufacturer.
The sister kind of explained why she was doing it. Like, she needed those cameras. She needed the eye of the people. So when she did the big turn, like crushing that boat into the city, they would just been that much more disheartened by the betrayal.
And by the betrayal of the heroes. It's kind of nutty. Yeah, man. Overall, a good film. Not a great film, but a good / great film, I would say. Where can we find you, Brent?
Well, you can find me at Twitter with King of Mist 33 and with you on Sundays.
Yeah, that's a secret, my man. That's going to be debuting very shortly. But yes, If you like this content and would like to support it monetarily, you can always visit our Patreon at mastersnerdiversecast.com, where the small yet needed donation of $1 a month can help this channel grow and become strong like a bull. But if you wanted to support this podcast non-monetarily, you can always leave likes on any of our social media outlets. May that be Twitter at mnerdiverse, our YouTube channel, which is YouTube/Masters of the Nerdiverse Cast, or any other of our podcast distribution services. You can always leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know what other animation films you would like us to review. There's hundreds of great animations that we can talk about or not talk about. Just let us know. And as always,
I'd love to see a Ghibli.
I want to do, let's do Grave of the Fireflies.
Oh. You like being hurt.
Just do Grave of the Fireflies and stop playing. So yeah,
it's a beautiful movie. There's no denying that.
No, but you're gonna die inside, at least for a little bit, for a while.
Both times I've watched that movie, I never teared up or cried.
I cried every single time I watch it. It's like, oh, I have the evening free. Let's watch a Requiem for a Dream. You know, it's like, what? No, those movies are emotional bombs, dude. But yeah, definitely subscribe to the channel. We have plenty in store this year. I'm very excited for some new things that are coming down the pipe for Masters of the Nerdiverse. So please stay tuned and subscribe. I have, of course, been your host, Mike G, and I will always ask you to look towards the skies. Look towards the skis.